Hey, cool guys. Hi everybody. Welcome to our Friday Funda session and hosted by FN Studios. Myself, Dayan here. And so today we have a very interesting speaker and topic, something which is very close to my heart, which I wanted to do, but good that my friends are doing it pretty successfully. But we are trying to do it on the digital space, right? So we have Meena, who's director of strategy and implementation in FHD Group. She'll explain more about what FHD does and so on. A quick kind of overview, so she comes with 20 years of international and local experience across design and development. So I think so. So how I know Meena is like maybe 25 years back in early 90s. Mid 90s, where we both went to the same design school. So we did our architecture from School of Architecture and Planning at university, right? And that's where I think from there she was a campus recruit in one of the IT companies in early 2000. So being a campus recruit from our industry software is not a big deal. You can easily crack it, but cracking it for being an architect, it's tough because you have to compete with all the computer science and triple E and ECE guys, right? So that's Meena, right?
Know what they're doing.
Yeah. so yeah, that's Meena for you guys. And so that 1 year was pretty useful for us. So that's why she was inspired how this business and technology merge and work together, right? Which actually inspired her to do a master's at MIT Boston, where she specialized in more towards real estate development and so on, right? So the whole focus, I think she is pretty passionate about two things, right? One is innovation, which means anything to do with first to market. So you have to innovate, and the way how to do it is to follow a particular methodology, right? Process. So these two are pretty passionate to her. And today she wants to talk about how our UXD process, right? When I say our UXD process, to all those UX and interaction designers who design this digital technology. So I think this is being used in multiple other design fields as well, especially in architecture and urban design and landscape and stuff, right? So that's what she's going to bring in here, saying that how they try to incorporate and how successfully they have done some of the big projects, right, for FHD. So without wasting much time, I'll ask Meena to take us to our journey. And yeah, thanks Meena for your time, and over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm super thrilled to be here and to talk about specifically something that I think both the IT industry and the non-IT industry are championing. And but it's a little more nascent in architecture, construction, and real estate development, but it's only a matter of time, which is the CX framework. But before I deep dive into that, I thought maybe I'll give you a brief on what we do, what I've done and what we do, and then why we do what we do and how we are doing it. So let me just quickly share my screen. Okay. And go to our PowerPoint. Okay. All right. Can you see? Yeah. Are you good? Okay. Super. All right. So we are. I'm director for the FHD Group. I look at strategy and implementation. I'm an architect by training. I went on to move on to real estate development, which is my passion. I love first to market products, and specifically sustainable ecohabitats, because I believe there are better ways to live and better ways to work and better ways to grow up in and grow old in. And so one of the things that over the timeline of my career has brought me to this particular place and this organization. Interestingly though, like how Dayan mentioned, I started my career in an IT company way back in 2001. I was a Lotus Notes and .NET coder, and I was developing intranet systems for a business that was setting up its offshore company in India. And so I was looking at the business processes like document management, time management, web-based tutorials, and having that IT experience, the business operations exposure, the design experience. Eventually, I went back to design because I missed architectural design specifically because I missed it a lot, and I wanted to be part of the earth, brick, and soil. So I came back to architecture, but I brought what I had learned from that one significant year there, and then I started incorporating it into my work, into my processes, into my business operations. So that's how we came. I landed up here with FHD Group a few years ago, and let me just quickly tell you how I structured this talk. First, I'll do a little bit about what FHD Group does, because it's in that context that I'll be explaining CX and how we do it, what we do, and then I'll deep dive into a few stages in the customer journey, and what specific implementation aspects we've applied. So who are we? So we're a collective of companies. We are one of the companies is called Organo. It builds rural habitat. Rural is a term coined which speaks about habitats that have very authentic rural experiences and also merge urban conveniences. They're usually on the outskirts of the city. They're anchored around farming and afforestation. So they do become a self-sustaining, a self-reliant habitat. The second company is called Togetherments, which basically takes the principles of urban living but brings it back to the city and says, how would we resolve or bring those aspects of urban living into the city? So, and then we have a construction company, which is called Metaphor, which focuses on high-end homes as well as building eco-habitat. And of course, our oldest and core design company, which is called FHD Consultants. They're over 25 years old and have built over 100 million square feet of residential real estate, designed over 100 million square feet of residential real estate. So as you can see, these companies, we said, what made us move from a design company to a construction company and eventually into real estate development? So about 10, 15 years ago, there was a collective itch, there was a grain which kept us wondering whether the kind of habitats that we are seeing in Indian urban environments was the kind of places that families should or could live in. Can they be better? So we said we are co-dwellers amongst other species. So we should have a fair share, but we shouldn't land grab everything. So we said, let's collectively start building an eco-habitat or a series of eco-habitats that celebrate living. Living in the sense of, like an act of being anchored in the present and indulging in that moment. And in a way that it doesn't disturb or impact the rest of the built environment or the natural environment for that matter. So we said, okay, if that is what is a nice way to live in that nice environment to live in, what are we doing right now? Are we designing apt living environments specifically for Indian families? Now here I'd like to stop a little bit and just talk a bit more. Architecture by nature is human-centered design. I mean, our design processes start and end with the occupants of the space and how they experience it. We are taught ergonomics, ergonometrics, design process, design thinking, and designing in context very early on in our education. And we apply it not just to our work, but to our everyday, tasks. So, but the training has a lot of references to international subjects or international ideas and sources. So while there is a lot of learning to be had from that, what we realized is it is equally important to look at and learn from how Indians and how we specifically as a community, as a group of people, occupy and utilize spaces. So our starting point actually was at the product design level. We started started digging through, and we realized we are, over 1.3 billion people. Traditionally, real estate consumers are categorized by their income level. So we would have, the lower income group, the middle income group, the luxury, the ultra luxury, but we felt there is a certain granularity that is missing. So we need to bring that back. We need to look at them a bit more closely and see patterns and behaviors. And we also need to understand how we use and occupy space and surfaces and objects and tools. So let me give you an example. This might be typical for most homes. Are our modern Indian kitchens, they're truly designed for Indian cooking, and the way we cook and how we store our ingredients and how we prep and how we cook and how we clean up after that. I personally feel that we are giving them an environment based on certain standards, and we are asking the families, our moms, sisters, everybody, or men, dads, and brothers also, to fit their cooking within that physical environment. So is that home actually responding to our real needs, to our real everyday needs? So where do we start? Well, we always start with our end user, ourselves, our parents, our aunties and uncles, and we go a little bit more. We look at our colleagues, our farmers, our children, and of course our flora and fauna. So when you're building eco-habitat, your user groups are beyond just people. You are building for a lot more. We look at soil health, and those are habitats for earthworms. We look at biodiversity, so that there's an increased number of species that occupy that space. So when you're designing for user groups who are also non-human, not really human, so how do you kind of start? Where do you start? So we have two strands, which I will kind of go into more detail. So before I get into that aspect, I'd like to talk about what we did, which is we started with, this has been happening for over 7-8 years now, where we do user research and typology research. So these are two different things. Users are occupants, and typology is actually the projects and buildings themselves, or the environments themselves. And in this, we also went on to do persona mapping when we are doing user research, and we also started applying sustainable features into typology research. Sorry, I'm just going to adjust this a bit. And that led us to two things that we realized that in Indian families needed, or any families or any environment need. One is an empathic product, empathic services, and empathic support systems for the end user. So if we have to do that, we realize we have to empower and we need to do that because we need to empower our customers. Moving into an eco-habitat, you have to be fully informed of what it means. Because while we all embrace eco-living, we all want to be green. I don't think any of us would ever say, no, I want to throw trash around, or I don't want to. We just have roadblocks in embracing that habit. But at the same time, I think eco-habitat is a holistic environment, which means you might have the occasional frog, a scorpion walk by, we have snakes in the farm. So these are things that you have to learn to code well with, and then, you yourself might have embraced, or you may have some urban habits that have formed over years, and you may have to learn to unlearn some of them. So we realized we needed to empower our customers and end users specifically. I'm going to kind of swap between customers and move to end user to understand, embrace, and adapt to living in an eco-habitat. And secondly, to enable our teams to understand that customer's journey and to deliver services that are tailored to our specific customers, end users. So in order to do that, we had to create new businesses. which will explain why we expanded from architecture to construction to real estate development. Internally, we had to organize our business operations, especially the ones which had multiple touch points with the customer. And we had to start implementing change initiatives within our organization. So one of those change initiatives that we did was CX design and implementation. So we knew what we wanted to deliver. We just didn't have. We kept pondering and thinking about how do you structure it? How do you make sure each team knows what to do, how to do, and how do you like instead of just constantly coaching and training, how do you empower them to do it themselves? So we were looking, we were talking, we were collaborating. And one such talk was when we had asked Diane to come to our office and actually talk about what they do in UI UX, because we started feeling there was a lot of similarities in what our intent was and how their framework was. And once we, he spoke about it in our company, it just clicked. We just knew, okay, here's a framework, it's structured, can be applied, and how do we apply it, and how do we upskill ourselves to understand it first. So about 18 months ago, we started doing that. Now, in today's talk, I'm going to focus a bit more and deep dive now into CX and implementation and less on the product design. For us, product and customer experience are not two separate things. We don't believe that you can, we believe they're separate threads maybe, but they're woven into the same fabric. And the experience of a product and a service by the customer and the product and the service themselves, all three of them are vertices of triangle, and they need to be balanced well. Product design and typology design is a very another deep topic, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of just focus specifically on customer experience, which we now have expanded to human experience, because we realized unless our teams who are delivering that product or delivering that service understand what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it and why it's always about the end user, it's not going to work. So we said human experience, meaning our employees, the people who are part of the journey, as well as the people who will experience it as end users. So I'm going to start a little bit more. Okay. So I wanted to start with an example. So one of the biggest, because it's home, I can talk about offices and hospitality and retail differently, but homes are very personal and a lot of us can relate to it. Buying a home and owning a home should be pleasant, should be comfortable, should be easy, should be simple. And yet in reality, it is quite cumbersome. In India, we have to navigate many things. Like for instance, if you're a home buyer, first-time home buyer, you do research, something, you start seeing something, somebody recommends a place, a name, a brand, a location. You visit the project, and you bring your family to visit along. You ask advice from that uncle who's been in the construction industry. You talk to friends who fought. You try to understand the process and the perils of home ownership. And even after purchasing and giving that booking amount, you don't know. You're constantly looking at, is this right? Am I getting my money's worth? Is the place going to be, what it's promised to be? Underneath all of this, however, there is a very deeper, untold need. In your heart and your mind, you have a dream experience of your future life. Right, you are looking for a best place for that future life to unfold. So every home or like model home visit that you're doing, you're actually saying, can your life unfold here? Can your future be here? Can this home accommodate growing children? Can it accommodate aging parents? Will I like to grow old here? So there's so many questions that you're not articulating, but they're there at the back of your mind, and you are trying to find that ideal space. So we said, okay, and how do you do that? I mean, it's in buying a regular home, it's a trying journey. How would you do it when it's an eco-habitat? As a homeowner, not only are you buying a piece of real estate, but you're also buying into a new way of living, a more responsible way of living. You have to conserve water, you have to generate your own power, you've got to help out with farming, maybe even skill development of the people who are servicing your your community. You may need to become a farmer if you want to. You have to accommodate other co-dwellers of the earth, like little frogs and fish and insects and reptiles. So, which is why we said, okay, let us make sure that our end users are fully informed and are fully committed to this. I'm going to pause here just to kind of give you an overview of what an eco-habitat is. So eco-habitats are communities built on sustainability principles. So one of the big main core differentiators would be that they move away from consumption patterns of existence to production patterns. What I mean by that is they produce their own energy, they produce food, they conserve water, the residents work together to do all of this, they improve soil health, they build shelters that are eco-friendly, and they have a social impact beyond the boundaries of their community, which means they do engage actively with our village neighbors. One of the projects that we've done, which is a World Green Building Council award-winning project, is called Organo Nandi, and this is our first project, and that one was built on these 7 principles of sustainability. So when you are onboarding a resident into this, how would you do it? So we said, okay, let's take them on a journey. So this is where it really, really helped. Where we said, okay, we created a customer blueprint, and we said there's going to be an awareness stage, a knowing us stage. Awareness stage is where they have just heard about us, or they know about us, or some friends told them. And then there's the knowing us stage where they're asking us, they're connected to us, we are talking to them. Not only are they knowing us, we are getting to know them. And then we call the stage joining the cause, because when you buy into Ecohabitat, you are supporting and championing a cause for responsible living. So the actual purchase happens in this stage. And then we have another stage which is called co-creating. And co-creating is where we actively, along with our end users, build their home, build the community, build the larger community, which is they start tying, skill development programs, job opportunity programs. And then we have the next stage, which is called the moving in stage, where you're moving into your home as well as into the community. Those are two separate strands. And then, of course, once you move, then you have the celebrate living stage, where you're actually starting to live the life that you dreamt or you wanted or you feel is the right thing for you. So in these 6 stages, we were able to now look at our teams. So we started orientation programs with our design teams, with our marketing teams, our sales teams, our product teams, our end user operations teams, and we said, okay, here's the customer roadmap. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we think you can do. And let's now work collaboratively and figure out how to do it best. So let me give you an example. So we had a blueprint. The blueprint has value takeaway, emotional touch points. We also had another section. We also have another section on underlying doubts. Who are the actors who are going to enable this? What are the activities they're going to do? What is their responsibility? And what are the tools that they use? So once we did that, we started deep diving into each of these stages. Let me just grab some water. So we started deep diving into each of these stages. So I'm going to show you, maybe I should pause and kind of find out if there are any questions before I kind of deep dive into what we've done in CX. Diane?
Yes, I think we are good. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
So do, regular, like kind of let me know if I'm going a little too fast. Yeah?
Yep. Good.
All right. So here's a zoom in into the awareness stage. So in this stage, there are two sub stages, which is like introduction and then finding us. So in finding us, for instance, we have value takeaway is collective farming. It's the only solution that is sustainable, where you actually witness safe food, where you are part of the food that you consume. You're not just getting it, but you're actually witnessing it, supporting it, and ensuring that what you're eating is actually nutritious and fresh. And the emotional touch points are that it's a root and community, these are eco-habitats and collective farming. The underlying doubt at this stage, they just heard about us. Like, who is Organo? What have they done before? Is there something similar to this already that exists? And how far is it from the city? And in this, we might have different actors who might act and who might contribute to this conversation. And then we have touch points which are both digital as well as physical. During this stage, for instance, is an example of how we broke this process down to actors, touch tools, and what is that what are all the actors in that stage? All of them aligning to it. They're all aligning towards like allowing the customer to have a value takeaway or the end user to have a value takeaway that is about collective farming. So alignment was easy, tools, creating tools was easy, and knowing what we had to do, the limits, the constraints of that stage was also comfortable. So that we're not talking about something that's 3 years in their customer journey right now, because you really want to just kind of help them through that step by hand, hold them through that step by step. So few examples I'm going to show. We made a guidebook for marketing our eco-habitats. In the guidebook, we actually talk about who are we talking, who are we, who's our persona, what do they do, how should you talk to them. Like, we are not marketing experts. The CX team has marketing insight, but we're not marketing experts. So the marketing experts have that domain strength. But what we're giving is allowing our kind of creating that framework and the limits of constraints so that they can then go ahead and take it further with their domain strength. Here's an example of what we built for our product teams. Because another thing at strategy level which we changed was we said whoever's creating or developing the product should talk directly to the end user, because any doubts that the end user has, the product team can clear in one go, rather than it getting looped between marketing, sales, and then eventually getting to the product team, and then the product team answering all the way back to the end user. So we said, let's kind of really keep it short, let them talk directly. So the product team were equipped with tools like a very specific product presentation. How do you, when a customer comes to your site, which is your construction site, what is their experience? I think I might have, sorry, let me just show you the customer experience tool. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to hop out of the PPT and hop into this document. So over here, for instance, the site experience, it's like a guide that outlines both process and certain tools for when families visit our site. So we talk about why this process is important, how you measure the success of this process, what is the value takeaway, what are the emotional touch points, who are the process owners within our organization. And we then jump into the actual, I think this is handover. Oh, sorry, I think I skipped this one. Yeah, this is the handover process, which I'll come to towards the end. So we also designed the communication tools for our product team. Like, how do you, like, they might have answered a few questions to end users or even potential inhabitants, buyers. So we tell them, okay, if this is what they're looking for, this is maybe a method in which you can structure your communication, and then talk to them about it, share this kind of information so they are fully informed, and it answers their told doubts and the untold underlying doubts. And another thing that the product team does is also run awareness events. Like for instance, we do about urban gardening, we talk about minimal living, we talk about waste management. So in all of that, we started asking, we said, okay, how do you design an event that will still deliver that value takeaway, have emotional touch points and answer those underlying doubts. And we gave them tools, templates, calendars, using which they can then run their own events and craft their own events. And then measure the success of those events. I think
you might want to just make it a full screen.
Yes, sorry.
Thanks.
So here's the product team also does empowerment and education. Like for instance, they had the local potter make the kambas, which are basically mini kambas. You can compost waste. We were looking for a New Year's gift, and this was an idea where the local potter made it. The homeowners were distributed along with a flyer on how to compost waste. And what was really nice was to see eventually photographs from them showing the compost and how they're using it in their flower pots and their gardens. So here was a tie-in between social impact to empowering our customers and educating our customers in the lifestyles that they'll have to embrace eventually when they move into Ecohabit. So where be it minimal living, be it waste management, be it urban gardening, or backyard gardening. So these teams had to have these kind of tools, and we thought this was amazing that they came up with this idea based on the principles of CX. Here's a short video. This is for our sales team. They had what we do. We run sprints as well to really narrow down the problem that they're facing and to identify actionable items. So this was one example of a sprint that we ran for the sales team. It's a short, video that goes in a flash, but it will give you an idea of what we did. So we had multiple stakeholders from the marketing team to the sales team, and we had people who were facing different kinds of issues in their sales process, and they didn't know how to align it to CX goal. So we had walked them through that, and then of course lots of digital sticky notes, and eventually we said, okay, here are some actionable solutions. And these are the people who are going to do this, and let's regroup in a couple of weeks and see if it delivered the impact that we hoped it would. So we run sprints as well, and we create for each stage. So now we've done marketing, we've done sales. The next, I'm going to kind of skip construction, co-creating stage, because that's where the actual home and the community are getting built. And we have really fine slices over there, and that will take up quite a bit of our time. So, but this is where we're handing over the home to the end user. So this is, again, we create manuals and checklists and tools and process diagrams, so that, and do orientations and trainings for the teams that are going to deliver them. And then we monitor, review, and make sure that it's getting done. So this is for instance our first orientation where we had the construction team, the operations team, the FM facilities management team, all of them involved, and our founder is actually giving them notes on why we do what we do and why this handover process, that particular moment of a customer's journey, is very critical. One of the things you'll know is when you've spent a lot of money, you spent a lot of time getting your home built, and when you actually take the keys and you're moving in, there's a lot of change that's happening, and we want to be able to help families navigate that change comfortably. So we started structuring this, and we started educating and aligning. So Let me pop out. So this is that document where we said, okay, the emotional touch point or the value takeaway would be that I bought the idea and now I've got the work. And what would the handover process be? How do you initiate the process? How do you schedule the handover? What should you be prepared with before you hand over the house on day one? What should they be educated on day two? Because eco habitats, for instance, let me just scroll back here. You'll see that we have about their home, right? This is exactly okay. Your home has these are the keys, these are your equipment, this is your manuals, this is your warranties and guarantees. Here is your remote controls for your AC. The very significant master checklist is given to the construction team, and they have to get sign off from the client at that stage. And then the second is where the facilities management team enters, and they talk about personal gardening at farm level, at what are the seeds that you can use, what is community level farming, and they again give orientation and get a sign off from the client. And the third is the sustainability guide. So the sustainability guide is basically what are the features that you invested in? Like what are the solar panels above your house? How much power do you generate? It gives you a product overview, but specifically about your home. And we also, these are, before handover, what you have to do, during handover, what you have to do. There's a kit that we'd like to, this is all future projects that we're looking at where we're saying, okay, how do you empower them? Can we give them a farming kit, a waste management kit, a shopping kit? Because another thing that, something as simple as jute bags, to allow you to shop without consuming, in zero waste stores. Support them in their home because this is a celebration, buying a home and moving into it. So how do you support them? Can we help them do an all green grab prevention? Can we do a zero waste grab prevention? So what are the different things that we can do? And then we had a series of checklists to make sure that our teams can just seamlessly deliver each of these things to different homeowners. And then, what are the emails they need to send? So we had scripted quite a bit of this. How do you, and this is an example of a checklist that we created for the community that we just handed over. So this one is over, I don't know, quite a few pages. It's like 34 pages, including the last, which is a simple feedback form. Has this information been useful to you? So, and if yes, okay, that ends this entire journey for the homeowner. And then of course they celebrate the living stage start. So I'm going to come back here. This is, one. So she's the homeowner and we're talking, I give her the orientation, or I was demonstrating the orientation on, what this group of engineers and architects and builders and contractors and, plumbers and farmers are going to tell them about. And then they walk them through over time about their home, about the backyards, about the collective farm. We truly believe that design is important, is integral, but so is implementation. And that is one of the reasons why we embedded the CX team into our organization. We tried consulting model, but I don't think it really works. Unless you are part of the system, you won't. We feel we know more in terms of the pain points of the people delivering it as well as the end users. So you can give holistic solutions. And when you give holistic solutions, they're easy to implement. When you give empathic solutions, they're easy to implement. So implementation is as important as design. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. I wanted to quickly, if you guys have any questions, I can take that now.
Wow, wonderful. I mean, so did you guys patent this entire process? I think you guys should do it.
We should.
So, I think it's so well done. I think the way you try to map it in the entire customer journey, I think it's amazing. I think so. I think so. What is the breaking point or the boiling point where you guys wanted to move away from a typical process to something like this? So what exactly prompted you guys to do this?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think what prompted us was primarily that ourselves had gone through the home buying process. As architects, you're supposed to know what's happening, right? Even though you're as an architect, if your journey of home buying is tough, we were just thinking how much harder it must be as somebody who's not in the industry, and we really wanted it to be empathic, not just for Ecohabit, for any home ownership process should be simple, easy. To this day, I don't like, for instance, we don't buy homes from the click of a button. We do, we go and we take our families and that uncles and hundreds of friends. It's a very collective decision making process, right? So we said, how do you make it easy so that everybody, all the stakeholders, all the well-wishers in your life who are going to influence your decision are all answered, are all part of this journey, along with the home buyer themselves, right? So when we talk to somebody who is interested in our project, we actually sit and say, okay, bring your family. Let us talk. Let us understand what you need and whether our product actually fits your needs, right? And so we said, and so we craft the journey. We have a big framework, and then we personalize it for each end user as well. But it stemmed from the fact that that it should be an empathic process. It should be a simpler process. So it's been brewing in our heads for more than 10 years. I mean, I don't think this is like we'll do it. We just caught a framework about 18 months ago, or 24 months ago. We started implementation of these changes 18 months ago, and we've kind of projected another 18 months for it to actually mature. So in design, CX is, I mean, in our industry, CX implementation, making sure we prototype the process, we test it, we capture feedback, we change it. And then to see the impact is actually almost the duration of construction of that project, right? So it's not like a single home and it's a community. So the implementation process is almost 36 months, and you have to have endurance through that. But it's worth it. I mean, we really believe this is important.
Yep. Because it's pretty interesting that I mean, architecture kind of thing which has been so established way beyond even when you compare with this what happens in this digital space, right? I think it's relatively much more newer, but yeah, generally people get inspired the other way. But yeah, you guys were like a little more aggressive to see that what's happening in this industry and try to pick that as well, right?
And I think that comes from the fact that a lot of the early UX designers, including yourself, had your foundations in architecture, right? That is, it gives you, it teaches you to step back and look at it a lot more differently. And I think the synergies came from there. We knew very quickly who to ask this question to, right? If we were looking for a framework, we didn't go ask like randomly. We were very specific, and we said, okay, we should talk to UI UX, right? Because they are doing digital interfaces or different touch points in a much more deeper way. So let's start there. But we haven't figured it all out. I wouldn't say yes, we've got it. I think we have a lot of learning. Thankfully, we collaborate extensively. We have young people in our organization, quite a few of us who believe and want to take this forward. So it's a growing environment field in itself. It's just that it's very, very close. Timelines are longer.
so yeah, I think one very interesting thing what you showcased was how you guys try to bring in different verticals, right? So you are your so end of the day you're going to design for your end users. Then you have your marketing people, because you're at the end of the day sell your product, right? And then you have the design team, and then you have your sales team, right? Yeah. So, I mean, how on earth did that designer survive this project? I mean, he's been like sandwiched between all these guys. So where is his creative juice are going, right? So it's going to be a challenge between, right? So many different verticals are going to push him back, right? How do you guys manage that?
No, I think design is in our DNA across, like, to be honest, like the senior management, most of us come from design fields, more like literally architects and developers and engineers. Engineers, so who've been part of the design process quite a lot. And so we don't have fights in terms of priorities. What we have Python are more in terms of quality, right? How do you up it? How do you make it more relevant? How does the product designer, the typology designer, the architectural designer, the the sales, like the entire all team members thankfully have designer DNA. So it's a little easier to understand the other person's perspective. We still I can figure out a middle ground, but it's easier. And we all believe, I mean, collectively across the organizations, and these are, like I was saying, it's a collective group of 4 companies. Across all 4 companies, empathic design is not questioned at all. Empathic service delivery is not questioned. It's how we do it that will get questioned, and that is natural, no? How better we do it. So that debate and discussion, I think, will continue, and it should, because it brings a rigor to the end solution. So
yeah, right. So good. So yeah, you also showcase the way how you guys take feedback at all every intervals, right, from the end users. So I'm able to relate how we do it in this digital world. Like yeah, we can bring them here, or you can go to their place, or showcase the stuff via these kind of virtual calls and stuff. But how did you guys manage that to take feedback at the design phase of this? I mean, how does the process go?
well, I think that's where we diverge, because sometimes the end user is not your client, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because for instance, we might be designing for a developer. The developer's end user, I mean, developer's client is actually, the end user is actually the developer's client. But who we are actually talking to is the developer, right? And we have to keep advising them that, if you do this, this will really help your end user. If you do this, this will really help your end user. And sometimes it works. You can't get direct feedback. You might get through them. But what happens is sometimes when that happens, you get market feedback. You don't get end user feedback. Right? So there are 2 different things. Market feedback is what sells better. But that may not necessarily be what the end user wants, right? Which is why we said, instead of being advisors, as consultants, as design consultants, you are an advisor. The developer at any point can say, I take your advice or not. And we said, no, let's actually demonstrate and let's walk their path, right? Let's not just say, okay, they're not doing, they're not investing, let's walk their path and see what practical problems are there and what pragmatic solutions are there. Right? These are realities. We can't say this doesn't exist or shouldn't exist. These are business realities. And we said, let's walk that path. And when we said we'll walk that path, we said we'll walk it sustainable eco-habitat in that journey, right? As an alternative to mainstream real estate. Thankfully, the environment we are in now, most communities, I believe, should have certain level of self-reliance in terms of water, power, and food. So we are, kind of stretching our business operations beyond our comfort zones. Like, for instance, we never, as a designer, you don't think you're going to be a developer at any point. You just, you need to build new muscle, you need to expand your capabilities very differently, which we are in the process of doing. So yeah, I think that comes from that, that gutsiness that designers bring.
Right.
Let's try it out.
Absolutely. Okay, so same question, kind of in a reverse way, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing something new, which the actual users have not even experienced it, then how important is the feedback?
Oh, very, 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 because you are testing something new, and in your head, you might have, articulated the problem. You're testing a solution, a series of solutions out. So you have to be open to that feedback, open to critical feedback, and be in that empathic space to hear all of this, right? And then say, okay, I'm going to still refine it, either refine the product, refine the service, or refine the experience of both. So it's very important, especially first to market products. They have no reference, right? You don't say, oh, that it's not like that other project that did really well, or that other environment that's amazing. You don't have those references. So you have to be open to feedback. You should also have a certain level of gut instinct about this. It comes over experience, and also comes from having a collective experience within the organization. It's not just one person, right? It's like a series of people who've all done and built their experiences over a couple of decades, and then informing and coming together for a solution. So we do have an integrated design process very much before the actual project design starts. There's product design team. So the product design group, actually not a team, it's a group of people, experts in their domain, who come together and talk about it. And then that after which is when our project design actually starts.
Got it. So, I think just last couple of questions and then we'll be good. So, can you just a little bit elaborate on this sprint? I mean, it was very suddenly when you said sprint, I was like, oh my god, what is this? I mean, you guys started completely like implementing all those software development process. It was pretty interesting. So, how did it go to like? I'm assuming you'll have design sprint and marketing sprint.
CX guys like Shubham and Jen, put that together, and we got our sales team involved. It was what happens is sometimes when you're problem solving, if you don't define your problem or you don't know what tool, you might have a series of problems. It's like a cloud of problems.
Yeah.
And you want to solve, but how do you solve it into small bite-sized pieces? So we had to figure out that. So when we were doing this, we kind of found this framework, and we started. A lot of the learnings that we're doing on ourselves or by ourselves has to be, we realized has to be customized for our industry, customized for our particular business itself. Right. So when we take a tool which we say, okay, all right, let's do a design. Anyways, we would do that even in architecture. The concept design is a sprint.
Right.
You take the site and you say, okay, here's the site. These are the constraints. These are the solutions. These are the opportunities, and let's design like this. This is what happens. So the sprint process was already there. We had this, and then we had to get our sales team members and our marketing team members, and we started asking them a series of questions. And while we were asking those questions, we were prioritizing their problems, right? From their feedback. We're like, so would this be a bigger problem, or is this a small problem? Is this a real problem, or is this a repetitive problem? Like we kept asking them until we helped them articulate what the problem was. And then we came back to them and said, okay, can we talk about solutions? What are workable solutions? And it has to be collaborative. I can't go back to the drawing table, come back to the solution and say, okay, here marketing team or here sales team, you guys go into apply. We believe that even problem definitions as well as solution designing has to be done collaboratively with the actual people who are going to deliver that. So we came back to them and said, okay, let's ideate on solutions. And then because time is a constraint, we said, let's not try to solve everything. Let's take 3 things and let's solve them in 3 weeks. So then it becomes workable. So sprint, that was the first sprint we actually ran, and we realized within 2 workshops, we had exactly what they need, and they were clear about what their problem was and what solutions they could use, and then build on themselves with anything what we were doing. I keep saying this because at CX, we didn't want to dictate what tools they should use. We want to empower them so they can build those tools eventually.
Very good.
Right. So a lot of that goes back to, kind of looking at it from their perspective and using sprints, discussions, workshops, sticky notes to get there. Now digital sticky notes.
Super. Yep. I think we have one last question, so I think we should be good. So, any quick advice for all the aspiring young designers?
Yeah, sure.
Architects, for me, all the same. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think yes, I do, because I think there's something that I would recommend to young professionals entering their careers now, because it's a different world in many different ways, and it's important in the first few years of your career to actually build a certain subject strength. I think what I see, sometimes when we're recruiting or when we're looking on, I see a lot of short-term jobs, and that might be because they're doing projects and consulting or this one. I would recommend if they can find certain long-term opportunities, because they will actually see the entire life cycle of a project. And when you see the life cycle, you actually see the pain points and the different, pulls and pushes that change how the project actually develops and is developed eventually. So a certain longevity in your first few years helps. Or you have to deep dive, which means, forget sleeping and then, a year of just cramming and figuring something out. So either do that, but anyways, have like kind of complete a few project life cycles. I think that learning actually helps you much in like 10, 15 years into your career.
Yep.
And the second thing is I would really like, which is something that I felt we all benefited from when we were much younger, is to be able to listen to critical feedback well. It's important to give feedback, and it's also important to receive it and to understand. Some people, when you give feedback, sometimes it can be caustic, sometimes it can be encouraging. It doesn't matter. The feedback matters. How it's delivered is secondary. So as young people, I would really say, pick up on that. Learn to self-critique first, to evaluate your own work, and then allow other people to kind of come give you feedback on your work. It really helps as a designer, as a person, in the long run.
Absolutely.
So that's my two things. Oh, yes. Can I do the third one, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Thinking. I would like young people to think actively. There's a difference between pondering. Pondering, I feel, is a passive thing where you just ponder about a problem. But thinking actively is a little different, because I think you should do thinking as an act of doing. So you think, okay, I have this problem, I have this question, I want to know the answer. Who should I ask? Has somebody else answered it? Where's the research? Can I connect with them? Can I understand that? Can I define this a little better? So if you're doing that, then you're actually working towards answering your question. Sometimes people stop in the pondering part. Oh, I have a great question, and then they just, kind of go into analysis paralysis.
Yep.
So I would really recommend building that thinking as an active act.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Great.
you so much for having me on. And a big thank you to our FHD CX team as well. They're championing this through our organization. So
I mean, we can see that in your presentation very well. So again, thanks Meena, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll stay in touch again. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
And
thanks everybody. Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you. Hold on. Special shout out to SAP 2000.